Alright, so you've decided to play Destiny 2. Oh, wait a minute. Didn't we do this already? Looks like we've been here before. If this is your first time, welcome. If this is not, welcome back. Allow me, your humble host, to guide you through the best part of the Destiny cycle, maximum hype. Yes, this is the time where every trailer Bungie puts out is an absolute banger, every YouTuber dry on content has even longer intros to read through, and a certain lore master is furiously typing away at a doc, ready to bring another side of Destiny's excellent story to life. You got new powers to discover, new weapons to earn or craft, you get to fly to Neptune in a retro cyberpunk-style metropolis and face off against a new legion of enemies. And just like last year, in a time where other shooter games are rebuilding or are growing a bit stale, Destiny comes back like the Giga Chad it is, and we are here for it. Destiny 2 Lightfall is basically Destiny 2, but at one of the most climactic eras in the Destiny world. If you're new, your journey starts here. Same goes for you lapsed folk that left at some point for one reason or another. Destiny is a live service shared shooter world full of action, RPG, and MMO elements, combined together with activities for, well, everyone. There's a story, and a very good story at that, which can range from easy to follow and, not so easy. But let's get you caught up on what's changed. So you just woke up on Russia, and you're asking, what's going on? If you plan on playing Lightfall and want a quick catch-up, then stick around. But if you don't want to have the major plot points of the Red War, Curse of Osiris, Warmind, Forsaken, Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, and the Witch Queen, and the seasons in between revealed, and skip to the next section of this video using the timestamps. Alright folks, yeah, jeez Christ, okay. So the important thing to know is that there's a struggle you're constantly told about between light and darkness. The Traveler symbolizes the light, and you, well, you are the Guardian. You were dead a long time until your ghost found you and resurrected you. Ghosts come from the Traveler, who made them as a last-ditch effort to combat its mortal enemy, referred to simply as the Darkness. Every Guardian started out with their own ghost, and they've got their own personalities too. But now you're almost a certified legend, and are going to be asked by Vanguard leaders, vendors, even villains to do their bidding at times, all in the name of prosperity, mutual benefits, and very good loot. In any case, in the world of Lightbearers, as Guardians are called, we are currently in the middle of a modern era. We've survived pandemics and a really dark time in history known as the Collapse, which came right after an era of massive technological advancements during the Golden Age. So now we're just kind of vibing. It's nice. At least we're trying to vibe until a Psycho Cabal commander stole our shit and burned it all up. The Traveler eventually woke up and destroyed the guy, but also woke up something else. Yeah, it's called the Black Fleet. It's basically a bunch of darkness scary Dorito ships on their way to annihilate us, which is basically base D2 or vanilla as we call it. Now enter Curse of Osiris, where a Vex hive mind tries to mess with different timelines and a grumpy phoenix man called Osiris needs your help. Then in Warmind, a tiny, yes, tiny if you could believe it, hive god woke up under Mars, and then some smug asshole awoken prince murdered our hunter Vanguard leader in Forsaken. And that was just the first 2 years. Meanwhile, Shadowkeep brings us back to the moon. It's literally haunted, and one of those scary ships is already here and just like quietly watching us. We go into the ship, face the nightmares of old bosses, and then face the darkness itself for the first time, which takes the form of us. We start seeing the darkness far more often in the Beyond Light expansion indirectly by embracing the power of stasis. We're not the only ones either though, as a group of fallen enemies also gain this power, transforming themselves into ruthless enemies that we take out one by one. The Witch Queen herself, Savathun, who has been working behind the scenes since D1, is the center of attention in the expansion of the same name, and it's here that we finally put a name to the darkness in the leader of the Black Fleet, the Witness. Now that's where we are now in Lightfall. We've already struck down a disciple of the Witness, and based on the Lightfall story trailers, Callus, a raid enemy from Vanilla D2, returns as another disciple. and we discovered the new subclass power known as Strand, letting us do a bunch of stuff from unleashing little infecting threadlings to grappling around the neon city of Neomona, the new setting where Lightfall's story takes place. It's set up to be the big showdown between light and dark, and another step closer to the ultimate payoff of nearly 8 years of Destiny. Destiny 2 has 3 classes: the Titan, Hunter, and Warlock. There is no right answer, but if you specifically want the cape, that'll be the Hunter for you. Truth is, in the early days, we used to view Titans as the typical tank, Hunters as like a lone wolf rogue type, and Warlocks as a support mage class. But really, they all can kind of interchange their roles. Hunters are really good at unleashing just pure damage and are pretty squishy, but they can also make their teammates go invisible or debuff enemies to help raise the team's overall damage. They're also the typical rogue stabby class. Titans do a lot of hammer swinging, punching, bashing, and crashing, yes, but they can also be a stalwart shield paving the way forward, or can create a nearly impenetrable bubble, boosting armor and damage for their team. Warlocks are more than just the moms of the fire team. Of course, they thrive at healing and healing their teammates, but they're just as lethal in chaining damage between enemies or unleashing massive elemental attacks on anyone in their path. You can make up to 3 characters, and most players have one of each class. Here's a tip I'm going to give you that I don't see people say often, because normally they just go, oh, punch equals Titan or sneaking equals Hunter and blah blah blah. No. The secret is to make each character and then see which jump you prefer. Trust me, they all have different jumps and everyone has a preference. Titans get a jetpack burst, Warlocks have a long range glide, and Hunters get like 2 or 3 jumps in a row. Believe me, finding a jump you can gel with will go a long way towards your enjoyment in navigating the world of Destiny. But I will not fault you if you go Hunter just for the cape, cause yeah, they are pretty cool. Now this next one really is the hardest question for me to answer. It is so confusing at times because different players like different things. If you're in it for the story, you'll want to do your best to untangle the past, current, and seasonal campaigns in whichever order of your choosing. If you want to do dungeons and raids, then you'll want to get started immediately on the power grind and get strong gear from, well, honestly, anywhere, at least at first. Your best case is usually the ritual activities, which are the PvE Vanguard Strikes, PvP Crucible, and the hybrid Gambit. You'll be getting different colored loot, and you'll want to aim for having a whole set of purple legendary weapons and armor, which tend to have the better stats in the game, mixed in with a couple of exotic gears in your loadout. Thankfully in Lightfall, if you are a new player or even a returning player that's forgotten how to navigate Destiny, we now have Guardian ranks, and your best bet is to go here immediately and just follow whatever suggestions it makes. The idea is the more familiar you become with the systems in place in Destiny, the easier it will be to eventually start setting content goals for yourself, such as getting ready for the endgame content, or figuring out which activities give you the rewards that you are interested in. Now, solo versus co-op is another point of contention. Generally, the rule of thumb is that Destiny is better played with friends. It is a shared world, and the more people you play with, the more fun you potentially have. I will give a warning though, you will most likely have a far easier time navigating with friends that are at the same level as you, because then you can discover the world of Destiny together for yourselves and everyone's on the same page. The best part is that there is a magic and a mystery to all of this. You will also be more in sync on quest steps, especially on older content, which can be really confusing. Now, I'm speaking from experience. I've tried onboarding several friends, but it never quite worked out since I operate off of habits and systems that are now second nature to me, while they're still getting their sea legs and navigating the dozens of currencies, menus, quest logs, challenges, triumphs, the battle pass. You get what I'm saying. That being said, unless you are an introvert and overall solo gamer, you will still most likely have a better time with friends than alone. It is also good to check the modifiers or info on any activity, as they'll give you a rundown on important elements like if matchmaking is active. Strikes, PvP, Gambit, and seasonal activities are all match-made, but Nightfall strikes of a certain difficulty level, like Legend or higher, Legend activities, Lost Sectors, exotic missions, dungeons, and raids, they don't have matchmaking. So your mileage will vary on how much fun you can have in these activities alone. For me personally, I am a solo campaign type of guy, fireteam friendly and nearly everything else. It's just easier for my brain to listen to story beats, cutscenes, and read, when I'm by myself, but again, to each their own. Now, one of the most unpopular eras in Destiny was the sunsetting era, where countless environments, activities, campaigns, and even weapons were taken out of the game or rendered obsolete in activities where power level is factored in. When it comes to content you can play, that means the Red War, Curse of Osiris, Warmind, and Forsaken campaigns have all been removed entirely. Several seasons have also been cycled out, including the recent ones leading up to the Witch Queen and Lightfall expansions. That being said, you can still play Shadowkeep Space Campaign as well as Beyond Lights. You can even still access the Dreaming City area, which was part of Forsaken. All relevant endgame dungeons and raids are also accessible from those expansions, with the exception of some exotic missions, such as Whisper of the Worm and Outbreak Perfected. The Witch Queen is technically old content now, but with the exception of the seasonal content, you can also play everything the Witch Queen offered if you own the expansion. Now that we're getting into the weed of things, you might be asking, how do you get raid ready? The fastest way to get raid ready now is to do the legendary campaign. Not only are the drops super rewarding, but completing it will grant you a complete armor set at the power level cap, which will be a massive boost. Unfortunately, unless you already have a pretty solid loadout, doing the legendary campaign will not be easy if you're starting out. Therefore, the best way in my mind is to play what you want and keep an eye on the number of the gear that drops for you. Playlist activities are the way to start. Hop in some strikes, go do the seasonal activity, and stash away any gear you get from the chests. Your future drops will weigh all the gear you possess into account, and you'll soon see the loot you get drop at a higher and higher level. Once you hit the power cap, the only way you can get higher drops is by doing activities that specify that they give you a powerful or even a pinnacle reward. Then we say a prayer to the RNG gods and hope that whatever item we get is in a slot that needs it. You also want to make sure you have solid weapons at the level cap. Doesn't really matter if your sidearm is at max power level if it sucks, right? Lately, linear fusion rifles have been the dominant weapon, but they are getting nerfed next season. So if you're trying to get older exotics, 4 really solid ones to aim for first are Arbalist and Sleeper Simulant, which are absolved from that linear nerf I mentioned. But then also Izanagi's Burden or even Whisper of the Worm. And that's just the start. That way you have at least one solid boss DPS weapon, so you're not completely throwing. Now, PvP is totally optional. There are a bunch of players that don't care for PvP and only do it if they absolutely have to for a particular reward. But it is a lot of fun and a great way for you to test out some of the shiny new loot you got out onto the field. PvP has a load of standard game modes you might find in Call of Duty or Halo. There is a quick play playlist and a competitive playlist, each with their own game modes. Quick play has 6-player modes, while competitive is delegated to 3-player modes, and even has a ranking ladder that works similar to games like Overwatch. Right now, PvP is honestly kind of in limbo, and most PvP fans are a little underwhelmed. The meta right now is more ability focused and less on gunplay. Not to mention, a bunch of Crucible maps have been removed over time during that sunsetting era I mentioned, which leaves the current rotation still fairly robust, but stale after all of these years. It is clear Bungie's larger focus is on the world building and PvE content, which is fine. But if you were hoping for more PvP content like new maps, it might be a little disappointing. That being said, the gameplay is still superb, so there's always that itch to be scratched by hopping in the Crucible. Gambit's kind of a meme depending on who you ask. I mean, it is a ritual activity, but it is in a weird place right now. On the one hand, it seems like every D2 vet, with a few exceptions, are simply just not a fan of the mode, while newer or casual players still enjoy hopping into it from time to time. If strikes are just killing hordes of enemies, and Crucible is dueling with other players, Gambit is that middle ground between the two in a single arena. It's a PvEVP activity, which means 2 teams of 4 race against each other to kill as many enemies as possible, and they collect the motes of darkness that fall from them. You bank enough of these motes, and you'll open a portal allowing you to invade the other team's arena and cause some mayhem.
That's 2 million now.
Once you bank enough motes, a final primeval boss will spawn, and whichever team kills their boss first wins. It is a pretty solid game mode by its own merit. However, as of right now, there are only like 3 or 4 maps, which means Gambit gets old real fast. It's also kind of weird in that the power scaling of enemies can be off-putting depending on how fast you're progressing, where you're popping off and then suddenly you face off against an obnoxiously tanky mini-boss. This can grind your momentum to a halt, and not only that, but with enough invasions on both sides, matches will start to drag. Of course, to each their own. I find that Gambit is actually quite a great game mode for newer players and is a good crash course in discovering the quirks of different enemies as well as testing out your loadout, all while providing a source of powerful gear drops each week. Okay, now we're gonna get a little bit into the veteran side of things. The Witch Queen brought the concept of crafting weapons in Destiny 2, and it is a really cool element for those who grow fond of a particular weapon and want to really make it their own without having to worry about RNG for a perfect drop. That being said, there are some hoops to jump through before you start crafting whatever weapon you want. First, you need to get a few of the weapon patterns to drop in the wild before eventually being able to craft them in the Enclave on Mars. There originally was a lot of materials needed for crafting, but in a recent blog post, Bungie stated they're moving away from these materials for a more streamlined system, so we're not entirely sure how crafting is going to look moving forward in terms of access. However, once a weapon is crafted, the rest of the setup is the same. The more you use a crafted weapon, the more it ranks up in level. Once you reach a certain level, you will unlock extra craftable weapon perks, barrels, magazines, and so on. The big one is the enhanced weapon perks, which are slightly better variants of the original mods. And if you get 2 enhanced perks, your crafted weapon gets a nice gold border around it, indicating that it is a fully masterworked weapon. Build crafting is another higher level thing to dive into that will be easier once new players get their sea legs in Destiny. For returning players, there has been a complete overhaul of the UI. Armor and weapon mods are now organized in a similar manner to the transmog system, where you can see all your mods at a glance on one page and can access individual armor or weapon slots quickly and with ease. For armor mods, you will usually find mods that directly affect stats like mobility, resilience, recovery, intellect, discipline, and strength. The second and third slots are more for weapon and ability based perks, just finding more ammo from drops, or being able to throw a grenade faster, or even take less of a certain type of damage. The fourth slot is where the real fun is, because that's where you can start building with intention, like with the damage boosting charge with light build, or an elemental well build. Some mods are being taken out, such as the outdated Warmind cells, but a significant change is that the whole system is now easier to understand thanks to the removal of elemental affinity. Before, if you wanted to build craft, you had to know which mods were tied to which element. Now, all elemental affinity is being removed from armor, so you'll have a better time crafting up more different loadouts for any given situation. Speaking of loadouts, there is a new loadout system for the first time in Destiny ever, which is really exciting. Now you can build up to 10 different loadouts and label them for use cases like raids or PvP. The loadouts will even pull items from your vault. Only caveat so far is to make sure you have enough space in your Guardian's inventory to pull items as needed. Now that's for gear, but what about your subclass? In Lightfall, every subclass now has the 3.0 treatment, meaning all of their UIs will look something like this. Basically, you have options for a grenade, or a grapple in the case of Strand, a powered melee ability, a jump, and a class ability. You will also have, and this is important, aspects and fragments. Now, aspects are class specific. Titans, Warlocks, and Hunters all have different aspects, even if they're all running solar, for example. But fragments are additional subclass perks that you can equip, and the amount of fragments you have are based on which aspects you roll with. Now, fragments are universal. That means Titans, Warlocks, and Hunters all have access to the same fragments. Mess around with the different aspects and read the descriptions on what they do. Important things to note are any buffs or debuffs, and they'll be bolded in the text, so keep an eye out and experiment. There are, to be honest, way too many currencies in Destiny 2, and thankfully we're getting rid of a lot of them. In general though, there's 4 main categories: purchasing currency, upgradable currency, seasonal, and premium. Premium currency is the easiest to note because that's just the Eververse shit, plain and simple. You have silver, which is bought with real money, and you have bright dust, which is earned in-game. With silver, you can buy any premium store item at any time, and with bright dust, you can choose to purchase from a rotating weekly set of items. Seasonal currency is actually on its way out for the most part, according to Bungie, but it was basically materials that were used to access extra chests at the end of seasonal activities, and or different upgrade paths with each seasonal vendor. There were dozens of them with different names, and it was easy to lose track of what they were or how many you had. Upgradable currencies are also pretty plentiful, but they are a bit easier to track because they follow a fairly linear conversion. Take enhancement cores. You get 10 of them, which equals 1 enhancement prism, and 10 of those equal 1 ascendant shard. And if you try to upgrade an armor piece all the way to 10, you will notice that it needs enhancement cores and will need more and more before needing an Ascendant Shard at the very end. Another material is known as an upgrade module, and this is needed to infuse your weapons. Infusing is a neat system that basically lets you keep any legendary or better piece of gear that you like, but you want it to take the power level of a higher piece of gear that you might not care for. So by using an upgrade module, all you need to do is take a piece of gear at a higher level that you don't want and infuse that same armor or weapon that you do want, and its power level will go up. General currencies like Glimmer or Legendary Shards are also pretty important for several reasons. Legendary Shards are used also in upgrading weapons or armor pieces, but they can be used to focus engrams as well if you want a specific drop of something that you've already unlocked. You can get Legendary Shards anytime you dismantle a legendary weapon or armor piece, as well as equipment like ghosts, sparrows, or ships. Glimmer is basically the in-universe cash and are used for things like purchasing bounties or unlocking certain subclass grenades from my core array. Glimmer drops from all sources, but particularly from the end of activity chests. Now, Destiny 2 is technically free to play, but the free version is absent of some of the best content in the game, and it can make coordinating with friends a drag. So you really have two options, and I'll break things down in more detail. If you are playing solo, you should dive into the base free version first to see if the core gameplay loop and the combat is fun for you before you make any other decision. If you have friends that are already playing the game consistently, or friends that also want to try the game out and are new, it does not matter what you play or buy as long as you are all on the same page and own the same content. Cannot stress that enough. That way you have better synergy over what locations and activities you have access to, and just less confusion overall on what to play. The easiest answer for everyone is to just buy it all, but I know that can be a big ask, so the priority should be to just see what your friends own already or are willing to own and sync up with them. If the story doesn't matter as much to you, it might be best to work backwards from the latest one. If you need to play things chronologically, which good luck, then the order of expansions still available today are Shadowkeep, Beyond Light, The Witch Queen, and Lightfall, with the 30th anniversary somewhere in between. Just know there were several seasons in between with story quests, content, and locations that are not playable anymore, so although I salute you and your valiant effort to play things in order, it will not be as easy as you might have hoped. There's also the question of quality. For me, personally, Destiny's campaigns are a little lackluster in Shadowkeep and even Beyond Light. Shadowkeep in particular suffers from having its campaign be confined to what are essentially nightmare hunts, and they just don't carry that much narrative weight. With the exception of a couple missions which are very good, the rest are kind of bare bones, and the campaign grinds to a major halt at several points for other minor objectives. Beyond Light isn't much better from a campaign point of view, however it does come with the Stasis subclass, which is full of darkness and freezing capabilities, and is a lot of fun to mess with. So if you want that power, you will need to buy Beyond Light regardless. If you want a solid, well put together campaign, then the Witch Queen is the choice. There's no new fancy subclass, but the campaign is worth the price of admission alone, and introduces an excellent villain in Savathun, the Witch Queen herself. Like I mentioned before, if you're okay with skipping ahead from a story point of view, then it is probably best to just go straight into Lightfall. There's a brand new campaign, new secrets to discover, new endgame activities, and most interestingly, a brand new subclass called Strand. Paying for any of the expansions will grant you access to all of the relevant story quests, endgame activities like raids, and other fun content like exotic quests. The one outlier is the 30th anniversary bundle I mentioned earlier, which is its own paid DLC content and is a celebration of Bungie's history. There's fun Halo weapons for you nostalgic folk, as well as a fan favorite exotic for original Destiny players, and a hilarious and fun swashbuckling pirate themed dungeon. Then there's also the seasons. Every 3 months or so there's a new season in Destiny that also offers a mixture of free and paid content. The seasons themselves cost $10 and you'll have a battle pass that gives you an armor set, transmog ornaments, materials, emotes, and even an exotic. The seasons usually have a weekly story quest with lore drops, cutscenes, a 3-player, and a 6-player activity. If you don't buy the season, you will still have access to the free track of the battle pass and some of the activities, but it becomes yet another confusing mess of only getting your feet wet and not being able to actually swim. But this isn't as relevant to newer players unless they're really interested in the story post-Lightfall. Now there's just so many starting points, whether free or paid, that there really isn't a particular right answer. The key is who are you playing with and what expansions do they already own? What are your own preferences or goals? If you want to go in order, you start with Shadowkeep and do your best to fill the gaps. If you want a test drive, you hop in the free game and just run around blasting enemies on the different planets in the Vanguard Ops playlist and see how it feels. If you want a quality campaign, you go to the Witch Queen or Lightfall, and you keep your eyes peeled for the seasonal activity and quest lines while you play. I get it. It can be really hard trying to get into Destiny, because it seems like the longer you've waited to start or to return, the weirder the game gets and the harder it is to catch up. There unfortunately is no perfect solution. However, Lightfall is primed to be the best attempt yet so far for new and returning players. There are plenty of valuable resources on Reddit and YouTube that can help break down things in greater detail, like lore tidbits, story catch-ups, and even gameplay of a lot of the Sunset activities and seasons, in case you're curious about what you've missed. I love comparing the journey of Destiny to the MCU, but it really does feel like we're finally approaching this climactic final battle at the center of the crossroads of all of these story threads and mysteries. I can guarantee that no other game has been able to do what Destiny has, and for as long and as successfully as it has, even though many games have tried. Some with success, and others not so much, even though they've all had potential. That's because none of those games have evolved quite like Destiny over the years, and the fact that Bungie has basically said no Destiny 3, this is a huge sign of their commitment to this game, and the changes reflected or listed out in their roadmaps for the future are a testament to that. So hop on the train. We'd love to have you. If you see anyone in the tower or out on the field, don't be shy. Make some new friends or discover some of the world secrets for yourself. There is something here for everyone. Now, what are you excited about for Lightfall? Let me know in the comments below and stay tuned for our eventual Lightfall review as well as some other videos. Also check out our written articles on GameSpot.com for more Destiny news and musings. Thanks for watching.